This is the tragic story of the man who tried to live with grizzly bears. New York man Timothy Treadwell always said he hated modern civilization and felt like he belonged in nature living with bears. So he spent 13 summers living among Alaskan grizzly bears, documenting their behavior and advocating for their protection. But in 2003, Timothy and his girlfriend Amy, who was terrified of bears, were camping at a grizzly site much later in the year than normal, at a time when bears try to gain as much fat as possible before hibernation, making them much more aggressive than usual. Some of the last footage recorded by Treadwell hours before his death showed one particular bear that he said he didn't feel very comfortable around. This was believed to be the bear that would end up Timothy, as his mangled spine, right arm, and head with a fixed grimace on his face were soon found near the camp. His girlfriend's partial remains were also found nearby, and the gruesome audio was captured by his camera. But authorities have refused to release the recordings to this day.
Well, the audio has been released, and let me tell you, it's not very good.
In 2002, a 15-year-old boy became inspired by the terrorist attacks on 9/11. He decided to steal an airplane and fly it into a building in Tampa, Florida. It ended up only damaging one office room, and he was the only person that died. In 1994, a Russian pilot allowed his 16-year-old son to sit at the controls of the plane. His son accidentally disabled the autopilot, which crashed the plane, killing all 75 passengers on board. In 1986, a commercial pilot bet his co-pilot that he could land the plane without being able to see, so he curtained all the cockpit windows and immediately crashed the plane. In 2010, a commercial plane crashed in Africa after a passenger brought a crocodile on board which escaped shortly before landing. This made everyone panic and run to one side of the plane at the same time, causing it to flip and eventually crash. It killed everyone on board except for one man who lived to tell the bizarre tale. After starring in The Never-Ending Story, young actor Jonathan Brandis became badly depressed as his career began to stall. He began drinking heavily in 2002 after his role was significantly reduced in a film he was banking on to revive his career. The next year, he was found in the hallway of his LA apartment at age 27 without a note. An Australian man survived a raging wildfire by scuba diving in his neighbor's pool. He stayed underwater for 5 minutes as the fire destroyed everything around him, but the man emerged completely unscathed. In 1978, mental patient Margaret Schilling suddenly vanished during a game of hide-and-seek at the Athens Lunatic Asylum in Ohio. Despite extensive efforts, Margaret remained missing for more than a year until her lifeless body was finally discovered. She somehow found her way into an abandoned ward, took her clothes off, and laid on the floor with her arms tightly clasped around her chest before eventually dying. Her body left a stubborn stain that's still there to this day, despite repeated attempts to remove it. After 8 people were tragically crushed to death during Travis Scott's performance at the Astroworld Music Festival, the rapper's former manager Shane Morris called him out for being an awful person. He claimed he wasn't surprised by the tragedy at all, since Scott once left him for dead while he was having a potentially deadly seizure in an LA studio. Morris was quoted saying, "When he sees people in harm or danger, he tends to continue only thinking about himself. And to make it worse, he's been doing this for years at other concerts." In 2015, Devin Staples, an actor who used to play Gaston at Disney World Orlando, died instantly while attempting to launch a firework off his head during a 4th of July party. On July 4th, 1826, President John Adams' last words before dying were, "Thomas Jefferson survives." Little did he know, the third president had died just hours earlier that same day. Not to mention, they both died exactly 50 years after the Declaration of Independence was passed.
And that is exactly why we need to stop glorifying these celebrities.
In 1993, Andre the Giant died in a Paris hotel from heart failure related to his untreated acromegaly, the condition that made him so massive in the first place. The 46-year-old wrestler had been in Paris to attend his father's funeral. The Altamira Man is an extremely well-preserved fossil of a human that fell down a sinkhole over 100,000 years ago. Discovered in 1993, experts are still working on a way to safely remove the skeleton from the calcite without damaging it. Lieutenant Elmo Dumwalt III died of cancer at age 42 after being exposed to Agent Orange in Vietnam. It was his father, Admiral Elmo Dumwalt, who initially ordered the use of Agent Orange in Vietnam. An estimated 400,000 people have died from exposure to Agent Orange, while 500,000 babies have suffered birth defects. Here's a photo of a Filipino survivor of the World War II Manila Massacre, showing his scar of where a Japanese officer tried to cut his head off with a sword. Arnold Schwarzenegger had a brother named Maynard who was favored by their Nazi father but died in a drunk driving crash when he was 24. Arnold didn't attend his brother's funeral nor his father's. In 1989, a primary school teacher in the small village of Miyakoji, Japan made an alarming discovery during a bathroom break. A black leather shoe was floating beneath the toilet bowl. Upon investigating further, she found a man's body in the sewer tank outside. Somehow the man had managed to squeeze through the 14-inch septic tank opening, likely attempting to peer up the toilet while women were using it. He apparently got stuck there and eventually passed away from hypothermia. In 2010, an amateur treasure hunter from England let his 3-year-old son borrow his metal detector for the first time. Within minutes, he discovered a 500-year-old gold pendant worth right around $4 million. In 1992, a man from Great Britain was using a metal detector to find a lost hammer on his farm. But instead, he stumbled upon one of the largest collections of ancient Roman coins in the world, worth well over $5 million today. And yes, he found the hammer. In 2012, British man Wesley Carrington bought his first metal detector, and within 20 minutes found a collection of ancient Roman gold worth well over $100K. Diver Mike DeMar was on vacation in Florida when he decided to test out his metal detector during an expedition. The stars aligned when Mike found something he originally thought was junk that ended up being a rare golden chalice worth over $1.3 million. The cup is over 400 years old and likely came off a ship called the Santa Margarita, which sank off the coast of Key Largo in 1622. In the year 2000, 19-year-old Kevin Hines began hearing voices in his head telling him it was time to die. So he rode a bus to the Golden Gate Bridge and jumped over the railing, a decision he would instantly regret. Upon impact, the 220-foot plunge shattered 3 of his vertebrae and narrowly missed severing his spine by just 2 millimeters. Against all odds, he miraculously survived the fall and surged with a sudden will to live. But the weight of his clothes combined with his injuries made it impossible to keep his head above the surface. Just when he was losing the strength to hold on, Kevin suddenly felt an unusual force from below lifting him above the water's surface, where he remained until the Coast Guard reached him. Later on, eyewitnesses revealed that a wild sea lion had been supporting his body and keeping him afloat until rescuers arrived. Kevin's story gained massive media coverage as he has since become a motivational speaker and an advocate for prevention. TV host Jimmy Savile was well known for his eccentric image and remarkable charity work through the BBC network. But after his death, it was discovered that Savile was one of Britain's most prolific predatory offenders, with over 300 potential victims over a 60-year span. There had been many allegations of this behavior during his lifetime, but his accusers were consistently ignored or discredited. In a 2009 interview with his biographer, Savile even defended viewers of CP, arguing that they didn't do anything wrong and are unfairly demonized. His victims were often patients at hospitals or psychiatric facilities, ranging from the age of 5 to 75.